6 exhibitions. In the spring of 2014, the Oysterponds Historical Society opened 6 small exhibition galleries in the former boarding house bedrooms of Village House. This was the first step in the reopening of Village House after an extensive and ongoing renovation. The purpose of designating the 6 small upstairs rooms as exhibition galleries was to give OHS an opportunity to show its extensive historical collections to the two communities of East Marion and Orient. Over the last 3 years, we have selected a wide variety of objects, documents, photographs, textiles, paintings, and works on paper to help illustrate the history of these two communities. As of this year, there have been 18 exhibitions in the series. We look forward to continuing the preservation of 6 new exhibitions annually in the lifeblood of any museum or historical society is the acquisition of new material. The Oysterponds Historical Society is no exception. Far from being a static organization dedicated solely to the care of old things, OHS is constantly acquiring new items that further tell the story of this small corner of the world. This material presents new opportunities to help us in our goal of informing the present by better understanding the past. Almost every new item acquired is donated, although a very small acquisition fund allows us from time to time to buy an object that would otherwise be lost. We usually try to find funding from a member of or friend of OHS if we discover something that is particularly relevant to oyster ponds or that relates significantly to an important item already in the collection. As you will see, the variety of objects that we accept reflects the great range of material that is already part of the collection. From bed warmers to paintings, chairs, hooked rugs, and oars, all sorts of wonderful objects. Windsor chair, attributed to Pellet C. King, circa 1805, gift of Doug and Karen Constant. Windsor chairs were a staple of American furniture made throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. The primary components of a Windsor chair are the contoured plank seat, drilled above and below, with sockets to hold the pieces of the back and those of the legs. The parts of the upper section and of the legs are always separate, never a single continuous piece as in most chairs. Windsor chairs were usually painted, and a fresh coat of paint was all that was needed to keep a chair looking new. Of the many Windsor chairs in the OHS collection, this is one of 2 attributed to Pellet C. King, a local craftsman who was active in Oyster Ponds at the turn of the 19th century. King advertised his chair-making business, which was located near the wharf, in the Suffolk Gazette in July 18. Rum War in the Sound, March 30th, 1932. Gail F. Horton, 2004. The artist writes, one of Dave's best tales is one of the night before his birth. Dave's mother, Martha Horton, was very pregnant. He recounts the story as told to him. It would have been March 30th, 1932, when Prohibition was still in force, and my mother and grandmother went to the movies in Greenport in the old Chrysler coupe with the yellow spoke wheels, and they were on their way home, and they heard bangety bangety boom out on the sound, and looked, and they saw flashing lights and what not. So they pulled over and got out and proceeded to watch the feds chase down a rum runner. And my mother got so excited she started to go into labor, and so my grandmother got her in the car and took her right back to Greenport to the hospital. Ice boating, Alan Bull, 2000. Ice boating is a highly anticipated winter activity in Orient that takes place on Halleck's Bay when the weather is cold enough. This scene was painted in February 2000. Alan Bull is an artist, teacher, and illustrator based in Newbury, Massachusetts, but has deep roots in Orient and is known for his many paintings of oyster ponds and the North Fork. He is a member of the Terry family. A painting returns, the Bark, Washington. Some 15 years ago, 2 paintings were stolen from the Oyster Ponds Historical Society. This unfortunate event was duly reported to the FBI and the paintings put on the list of stolen art that is kept current at the FBI. Security was, of course, heightened at OHS, but the paintings were gone, although not forgotten. Then, in the spring of 2015, our collections manager received a telephone call out of the blue from an FBI agent reporting that one of the paintings had been recovered. Several months later, that same FBI agent delivered the painting safely back to OHS. The work in question, the bark Washington, was particularly important to OHS, as it was, and remains, the only whaling picture in the collection. Furthermore, the vessel has a strong connection to Oysterponds, as the Washington was once captained by Edwin P. Brown, the only whaling captain who lived in Orient during. The bark Washington, artist unknown, 1860. This is the only whaling painting in the OHS collection. It was stolen some years ago, as stated, and was a major loss. When about a year ago we received a call from the FBI saying they had recovered the painting, which was a cause for celebration. This exhibition brings together some of our rich collection of whaling material, including several items that are directly related to this. Captain Edwin P. Brown's logbook of 3 voyages, years 1841 to 1847. Captain Brown was Orient's only whaling captain, and the records of his voyages, his correspondence, his scrimshaw, and other objects are among the most important items in the OHS collections. The logbook is open to Captain Brown's entries for October 1843. Whenever Captain Brown saw another whaler, he made a sketch of it in his logbook. This sketch represents the Henry, also out of Sag Harbor, and captained by George B. Brown. As the two captains knew one another, they exchanged visits on the high seas, rowed over to one another's vessels. On Tuesday, the 17th, he writes, "Saw 2 sails, one merchantman, the other the Henry, who I spoke just at night and went on board a little while." On Wednesday, the 18th, Captain Brown writes, "Steering southeast by east in the company with Henry and had Captain Brown on board." Sternboard of the Henry, circa 1818. This is the sternboard of the Henry, the very vessel that Captain Brown visited on the high seas during his voyage on the Washington. The Henry was built in 1818 and joined the Sag Harbor whaling fleet in 1828. After many voyages from Sag Harbor, the Henry made her final voyage in 1850. An advertisement shows that the Henry was to be sold at public auction on October 4th, 1850. Presumably, crafted in wood. There are many thousands of diverse objects made of wood in the collection of the Oysterponds Historical Society. The difficulty in making selections for this exhibition was not the lack of items, nor their quality, but how to narrow our categories and choices to fit in the gallery space. Entire categories such as furniture, ship models, and spinning wheels had to be eliminated, but may become subjects of future expositions, as well as sorts of large-scale objects, some of which, however, can be seen in the exhibition next door in the Old Point Schoolhouse. 6 categories of objects made of wood have been selected and all illustrate, once again, the richness and diversity of the OHS collection. Household items, toys and games, tools, decoys, farming. Dry measure, 1754. This dry measure, in the shape of a small bucket, is clearly dated 1754 and is signed on the bottom with the game board, 1784. This is another rare survival from the 18th century, made even more unusual because it is signed and dated. We do not know the identity of GG or where the board was made, but the 5 games that make up the board on both the front and back presumably gave hours of pleasure over many years and generations. Among the games are draughts or checkers, 9 men's barrel-shaped dry measure, 1856. This dry measure is signed and dated and is a wonderful piece of Oysterponds material culture. It is carefully inscribed on the bottom by John H. Terry, who was Orient's last miller, a position he held from 1856 until 1898. Schools in Oyster Ponds. This exhibition celebrates the 50th anniversary of the construction of the Oysterponds Elementary School in Orient. The official name is the Oysterponds Union Free School. The exhibition honors former school superintendent Donald Borum, who had indicated that the construction of a new school was one of the conditions of his acceptance of the superintendent position. The cornerstone of the building was laid in 1966, and Mr. Borum led the school district with this. The Orient School Bus in 1936. Edwin King owned the official Orient School Bus, which served both the Orient Village and Orient Point. His daughter, Gertrude King Reeves, drove the school bus. One of the three slates in this case is noteworthy because it has its original sponge still attached to wipe the slate clean. The red, white, and blue box contains writing instruments for slates. The three larger books are textbooks for reading, spelling, and arithmetic. The small book was a prize given to a student and inscribed, "From your loving teacher," on December 23, 1873. The bell was most likely used in one of the two East Marion schools. The earlier of the two schools is shown in the large photograph on the left. It was a 19th century structure which probably was rebuilt over the years. East Marion School was originally located on the main road and Gillette Drive, and was later moved east to what is now the old schoolhouse park. The smaller photograph just below was taken in front of the school in about 1900. The photograph on the right shows the second East Marion schoolhouse built in the same location and construction because the number of students had outgrown the old school. The smaller photograph shows the students standing in front of the school in about 1913. When they were moved, both school. Tip to toe, hats and shoes. Wearing apparel is a very important aspect of the textile and costume collection at the Oysterponds Historical Society. Although this exhibition focuses on our collection of hats and shoes, there is also an extensive collection of dresses, coats, trousers, shirts, shawls, scarves, undergarments, and other fashion accessories. The hats and shoes on view are some of the most appealing examples in the painted plaster bust of a woman. This plaster bust of a woman was made about 1900. It is inscribed on the back of the base. Brown straw women's hat, circa 1905. This is extravagantly large hat decorated with brown flowers is typical of the Edwardian era. Blue wool with white embroidery, pink and white striped pattern with rose design fabric, blue leather moccasins. Patterns for making baby shoes could be found in a variety of women's magazines. For example, the January 1859 issue of Peterson's magazine illustrates a pattern for an infant's shoe with full-size diagrams by which to cut it out. The article goes on to say, any lady can make this out of such material as she prefers. Three baby bonnets. These three silk and lace baby bonnets are beautifully embroidered. Men's black top hat, second half of the 19th century, gift of William Steeple Davis. This top hat, most likely made of silk plush rather than beaver, belonged to William Steeple Davis. He probably inherited it from his father, Charles Davis. Top hats became fashionable in the late 18th century and were worn throughout the 19th century. They are still in use today for many formal occasions. Straw boater, early 20th century. This men's straw hat with a wide black ribbon and flat bow on the side is in excellent condition. Written on the inside in pencil are the words C.E. Halleck, Mattituck. The inside label reads in part, "Shine above all straws, Styles in New York." A boater is made of stiff Senate straw and has a stiff, flat crown and brim. Boaters were popular in the late 19th century and early 20th century for summer pursuits such as boating or sailing, hence the name. In the days when men always wore hats out of doors, Straw Hat Day was the day when men switched from wearing winter hats to lightweight summer hats. Pair of men's boots, mid 19th century gift of Photographs, commercial buildings, and oyster ponds. The many thousands of photographs in the collection of the Oysterponds Historical Society constitute one of the very best sources of documentation of East Marion and Orient. Until the early 19th century, these two communities were known as Oyster Ponds Upper Neck and Lower Neck. The names were changed in 1836. Although commerce in both hamlets is very limited today, in the past there was considerable activity as the photographs in this gallery demonstrate. King Bros Meat Wagon, circa 1910. C. Ambrose King and H. Cortlandt King operated a meat market and grocery business in Village Lane. Here, their delivery wagon is stopped in front of a house on King Street. The man pictured with his coach. William E. Brown's Bicycle Shop, circa 1890. William Brown was one of 10 children of Captain Edwin P. Brown and his wife Martha, who built the large house that stands on the main road just opposite the Candyman. William Brown's bicycle shop was located in the backyard of the family house. He is shown here with one of his sisters and a niece. Bicycling was a fashionable. Rackett's General Store, East Marion, circa 1900. Located on the main road in East Marion, this store was originally built by Maxon Tuttle around 1860. Over the years, the store had at least 5 different owners until it was purchased by Williard Rackert in 1897. Rackett, whose name appears on the side of the building in this photograph, sold the store in 1928. Sometime after that, a second floor was added. It now houses the Fork and Anchor.